So today we're going to get started with invoking using OpenPose control nets. Effectively, the OpenPose control net allows for you to pass in either an existing image of someone in a pose or pass in a pre-processed image so that you can do that and kind of control that using a template. So to get started, I'll start from scratch here. We're on our control layers tab on the generation tab. We have no layers added currently. We're going to go ahead and add a control adapter layer. That is going to allow us to select from our models. There is, if you haven't seen the new SDXL models, there's a new set of community SDXL control nets that are particularly good. I think there's a Canny, an OpenPose, and a Scribble. Maybe someone kind can share out the link to that repo here so that you guys can have access to that. But this is one of the newer models, the new OpenPose model. I'm going to pass in a control image here. Make sure that we're sized correctly. Now, note, I had already passed in a pre-processed image. I passed in something that had already been processed, and now I've got a blank screen. Oh no, why? Why is this happening? Anytime you're using an already processed image, something that you want to use as a template, you need to make sure that you turn off the processor. So the processor by default for OpenPose is going to be the DW OpenPose processor. I think technically it's DW Pose is the name of it, but put OpenPose to make sure that you know it's supposed to be used with the OpenPose model. This is a openly licensed processor. That's why we use that one, but it's also superior. It's better than the original OpenPose processor. But we need to take that off. We're going to remove that. Thank you, Glimmer, for posting that. For people catching up after the recording, we'll include a link to those ControlNet models in the details. One thing I'll call out while we're here is that while the OpenPose processor does have face and hands as an option, the underlying models have not been trained to use those. So you're not really going to get much out of turning those on. Maybe at some point in the future, someone will go in and include those as well. But typically that's going to probably find other control nets are better for that. I'm going to turn this off. We'll see our pose come in. And we've got a photograph of a man wearing a jacket. Maybe we'll add in some dynamic cinematic lighting. Golden hour, 80mm lens, and actually, lens. Okay. Yeah, we like that. Now I'm going to add in a regional guidance control. And we're going to turn off. Oh, we don't need to turn this off. I'll just do brown leather jacket with a. No, we'll just do brown leather jacket. We'll keep it simple. So I'm going to do that on the arms here. Do this on the chest area, and we'll do that down the other arm. Now, I'm going to call out what we're looking at with OpenPose. When OpenPose does an analysis, there's a couple of pieces inside of that processor that are being keyed on for the model. This area up at the top, these kind of 5 dots, represent the head and the eyes, kind of the direction of where the gaze is facing. This kind of blue area is going to be the head and neck, kind of that unit of the pose. We've got the shoulders here. This triangle area, obviously our legs don't start at the center of our neck. This triangle area is often going to be seen as the torso. And this is kind of the area that you'll find very often has a little bit more flexibility because it is kind of triangular in shape. So it's a little bit little bit more like a connect the dots type imagination between this dot and that dot for where the torso is going to be. But that's heavily dictated by the content and the character. This is really more structural skeleton type stuff. Um, Below that, you've got legs, right? It's okay. Cool. Somebody in the audience is calling out, we've got nose, eyes, and ears. So ear, eyes, nose, seems plausible. We'll do some comparisons to see if that is accurate. I've always mostly just thought about it as like the head. But we'll generate this and see what we get. Now I just booted this up, I think, so the model might take a second to load. But what we should expect to see, and what I'll probably do is pull up the comparison slider, is we should see that this aligns pretty much one-to-one. For those who have not updated to 4.2.4, if you are using our commercial license, if you're using the commercial product, you'll have this as well. If you press the Alt key and hit an image inside of the gallery, it'll open up a comparison slider, particularly useful for comparing things. So we're going to kind of compare this here. We can see those mostly accurate. We got the arms, we got the shoulders, we've got the head. Face looks a little bit off, a little bit strange, and I think this jacket is giving us a little bit of shadow on his skeleton. But ultimately, I think mostly aligned with the pose that we got. We might try maybe one or two more and just compare these to see how these vary. I think it's important to call out that with these types of control nets, the control net has learned a relationship between the control image and the output that is not as specific as something like a canny or a depth, right? Because canny is basically saying this is a hard line. There's a hard line here in the image. What this type of control net is doing is more so creating a relationship. It's almost kind of like a semantic meaning of this is typically where heads are, this is typically where arms are. I think it's important to call that out because that type of relationship, in some sense, is sneaking in assumptions inside of the control net model. It's almost like it's prompting for body parts when you use an OpenPose. There are some open or pose models that have been created, I believe, in the community for like animals, because this obviously wouldn't really work well for cheetah. If you use this, it would try to create like a cheetah human hybrid or something like that. But it's kind of like an implied meaning when you use an OpenPose of what you're asking for, because it's built this relationship between the pose and kind of the body part. Someone said, please make this cheetah. You've stoked my curiosity. Okay, we will. Although I did say no body horrors on this image, and we might get something a little weird there. So you can see some variation. There's obviously a general structure that's been kept pretty consistent pose-wise, but it's not direct to the point where it's like an exact position. Because you can see the gaze, and this one looks a little bit off to the left. This one's kind of like right on the camera, roughly in the right spot, but a little bit less like direct control in the sense of like a canny, and a little bit more freewheeling. But what you'll find typically is that when you use OpenPose, you're going to get a little bit more coherent hands and kind of body parts. That's just, again, because there's almost some of the more like machine learning advanced folks in the audience might like say that not quite accurate, but in my mind, I almost think of this type of like subtle relationship as like an embedding. It's kind of like a hidden embedding, right? It's prompting for things that look like what it has seen before, and in such a way, it's almost kind of like guiding it towards better anatomy because it's been trained on that. Now, I will say it's probably safe to say that this wouldn't do well for abnormal anatomy, right? It won't do as well generating things that don't have the standard anatomy, and that's kind of like one thing to call out, is that it's going to be hard to do that type of stuff with. But we're going to do photograph of a cheetah wearing a jacket. We'll see what type of nightmare we get today. You all asked for it, so this is what happens. Actually, not too bad. I'm gonna be honest. I was expecting worse. Honestly, the coolest looking cheetah I've ever seen. He's got a nice jacket. I think he maybe slaughtered one of his friends for his cheetah leather jacket. But you know, it's pretty cool. So we can definitely see at the very least, even if it's not like a cheetah human hybrid, it is strange and unusual, right? It's got some weird stuff there. Although, you know, if we wanted to go cheetah humanoid hybrid wearing a jacket, let's see if we can get more of a yeah, people are starting to post Cats the musical pictures now, which is nobody needs to see that. Okay, that's what we're looking for. That's right there. I don't need his type standing up cheetah. We're going for cat humanoid hybrid, which I think we've excelled at. This is like definitely a super cool cheetah. You'll notice again he's got hands, partly coming from humanoid, partly coming from the OpenPose, but right in line with our OpenPose. His arms right there. We can see it right there. His shoulders. So you know it's aligning the human form to this. Somebody asked which model I'm running. This is a custom model that has been trained and mashed together using the Invoke training repo. For those who are not familiar, Invoke runs or has both open source studio tools, but also open source training tools. The training tools are a little bit more kind of focused on kind of I would say like more tech savvy folks who can pull down, run the environment, and kind of run through some of the scripts. There is a UI. It's just not as UX focused as this. It's functional. Thank you, Glimmer, for thinking the training repo. But there are tools there for fine tunes, LoRa's embeddings, model merging, auto captioning, mask training. There's a whole host of scripts there to help make your models better. I think it's probably one of the more valuable things that you can do is to understand how these models change as you influence them so that you can guide them towards the type of outputs you want to generate. So we'll get back to our different poses here, and maybe we can do something a little bit different. We'll try this one here. Obviously, we'll take our brown leather jacket out. And so we've got, you know, this image of someone kind of pointing up to the sky. There's almost something magical happening here that they're kind of pointing off into the distance. So we will say this is a photograph of a what doing what? What are we trying to create here? Yeah, somebody said so many tools, so little time. Yeah, there are lots of fun things to play around with. A panda pointing to the moon. Okay, so we're really trying to get out of the humanoid frame of OpenPose. We're testing the hypothesis here of can it do things. Photograph of a panda pointing at the moon. Okay, we're going to try to put big bright moon right there. Turn off auto negative. Let's see what we get. Did not put the moon where we wanted it, did we? It's not really pointing at the moon at all. Did get the panda though. So we've got the panda. He's kind of more doing this kind of like draped arm type thing. Not quite what we were doing, but that's okay. Let's see what happens when we turn auto negative on. Reminder, auto negative is the simplest way to describe what auto negative does. If it's on, we're explicitly saying add a negative prompt for this everywhere except the region that we've put in. So we're trying to keep it kind of isolated to this region. And we're going to try that out. We're going to see if that works. And if it doesn't, we'll try upweighting our big bright moon and see if that gets us more where we want to go. It's closer. It's kind of in the region a little bit. He is pointing at it. That's kind of what we were going for. Honestly, that's a pretty good one. I think he's pointing at the moon, right? So despite the fact that the OpenPose model is designed for humans, man, that moon just really doesn't want to go. This is the fun part about regional guidance and moons. I think we filmed this maybe a few weeks ago, but placing objects using regional guidance, especially the moon, for some reason, extremely challenging, extremely difficult. It's more like painting on top of an existing structure rather than trying to like shove something there. So we're just going to assume that that's not going to work. So we got this panda pointing at the moon. We're good. Someone said 2 moons in this. I don't know if I'd call that a big bright moon. I think that one's a small moon. This one's moon. The interesting part here, and I'm going to go back to this because I think it's probably worth calling out. Let's compare all of these. This one's proper. This one's decent. This one's way out of whack, right? Like this is not the right pose at all. And I'm going to chalk that up to this being a panda. I think the panda is probably going to have lower hit rate on success. And again, it's just, I believe because OpenPose is really trained on the human form. So if we do a photograph of a, I'm thinking like La La Land almost, woman in a polka dot dress pointing at the moon, dynamic cinematic lighting, we'll do film still. Let's go back to our canvas or control layers here. Let's add, color is this? I will say a red and white polka dot dress, and kind of like draw that on here. We'll turn off auto negative so we need it. We'll just see what we get without prompting for the moon. That helps in any way, shape, or form. She's not really pointing at the moon. She's pointing. She's not pointing at the moon. It's red and white polka dot dress, but you know, moon's over here. So I think, you know, this kind of gets into some of the fun of, and I think probably why we're all a little bit disappointed that SD3 seems to be going not the way that we all wanted to in the open community. The prompt adherence and understanding relationships between different things is significantly improved in the SD3 model. That's kind of what we're looking at here. I very clearly think that there is going to need to be a new openly licensed model that is trained for the community so that we can get advantage or take advantage of some of the prompt adherence improvements that came with SD3. But for right now, we're dealing with control using control layers. And what that means is we really kind of have to like fight for some of those compositional elements. Now, what we could do here, if we wanted to get this perfectly correct, is I'd probably take this out to the canvas. In fact, we can do that. Let's do this real quick, just because I'm people know that I accept defeat very rarely. And in this case, we want the moon to be here. So I'm going to take this out to the canvas. I'm going to erase that moon. And then I'm going to do an image to image, and I'm going to use our going to use our ControlNet here. So I'll bring in the OpenPose. We'll bring back our pointing one. We'll take off the processor. So we've got our OpenPose. We've got person pointing at the moon. And we can do this pretty high. So I'm going to do that at 0.9. And I think we'll be okay because the moon's bright enough that that white spot is going to be an anchor for the attention. And we can keep the denoising high just so that we've got control there. One thing I'm noticing, though, is we don't have the regional guidance on this image. So might be better to do the regional guidance is what was making that a red and white polka dots. And now we've just got our black. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just do the masked area here. We'll just regenerate the moon. And that way we can kind of have our image back. Beautiful. Kind of like orangish, an orangish cheesy moon, orangish cheesy moon. And for good measure, we will go in and just kind of fix up his face and hands. We deserve that. We deserve to fix that. Beautiful. We got it. Just pointing at the moon. We got everything that we wanted out of this picture, and great success. We clap when we have good successes like that. All right, so we're going back to the control canvas here. I'm going to catch up on questions. Is regional guidance available by default, or do I need to get additional stuff? Regional guidance is baked in to the application. There are no models needed for that. That is effectively inferencing technology that has been baked into how the denoising process works. You can effectively pass in masked regions of prompt for conditioning. So it's kind of like a regional conditioning. And that lets you do the fun things that we do on the control layers. So you don't need to download models for that. If you want ControlNets, IP adapters, or some of those other kind of fun control tools, you do need to download the models for those if you're using the open source tool. Our hosted product has all of those pre-installed as defaults. And Blessed Cool already answered all those questions in chat. So I'm just repeating for those watching, I guess. Now, we've got a couple of other poses here. I've got this one. I've got, it's kind of like weightlifting one. Maybe another like looking still and posing. Do we have any questions from the audience here on things that you've struggled with in getting anatomy right? Now, we don't always have to use control nets or OpenPose. We can also talk about things like hands. Someone said, I often create two persons instead of one. The question I'm going to ask is, if you're generating an image at a high resolution, it will often duplicate the people. So there are two resolutions that are kind of like anchors. If you're using Stable Diffusion 1.5, you want 512 by 512 as kind of like a starting point. That's where you want your image to begin. If you're using SDXL, typically 1024 by 1024 or around there is going to be the size you want. You can always check this by hitting the optimize size for model. That'll kind of pull you to the default aspect ratio. If you have a specific aspect ratio that you want to use that isn't these pre-installed ones, you can resize things to your liking, lock it, and then optimize it. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but you'll want to kind of stick around whatever's in the default resolution for the model that you're using. You can also go into the model manager and customize that on a per model basis as well. Okay, other question. Why is it so hard to generate people on grass using SD3? I think that's a joke. So I'm not going to answer that question, except I do think I know, I mean, this is all conjecture. I believe that SD3 probably has some safety tuning that they did to the model that is adversarial in nature to stop people from using it for certain purposes, and that has caused certain anatomy problems. I don't know that that's the case. It's also just possible that the model's underbaked, but general sentiment, I think, is leaning towards that former. Uh, people people are asking hands, number of legs, feet, arms. I can go on. If you're using an OpenPose, you won't get 7 arms. You won't get 4 legs. You'll typically get a person most of the time. Sometimes you'll get a cheetah in a jacket. If you are struggling with the hand shape, though, so maybe we go back to one of our previous images. So this one, decent hands. This one's a little bit weird. This one's super weird, right? This one's got like this very weird, almost like crab claw hand. This one's way weird, right? We can edit those things on the canvas, right? So typically the way you do that is we'll take our prompt from that, we'll zoom in, and typically I like to do an IP adapter with the composition control. That just kind of helps it understand a little bit about like where it's generating. Typically in this type of context, like the way that I like to think about the canvas is anything inside the bounding box is what it's trying to create. And so it's going to try to really look at this with photograph of a man wearing a jacket, and it's going to be like, I need to create a new person here. When we use IP adapter, we can kind of inject a little bit more context around where compositionally is it looking at this type of image. And so that's a way to kind of do that. So we're going to generate this. We'll keep the denoising strength a little high here. And we'll see if we can get a better hand. Looks a little better. A little bit out of place, though. And that's probably because it's, if we're looking at this, this is a good analysis, right? Out of proportion. Why is it out of proportion? Well, because it generated something that it didn't have a whole lot of context for it. We know it's out of proportion because we can see the rest of the image. The AI model can't. So we're going to take that out. Maybe we're going to zoom up a little bit more so it has more context of like what it needs to fit shape-wise. And we're going to do that bit, and we'll regenerate that. So that gives us a little bit more context, and hopefully it is shaped a little bit correctly, although I'm starting to see the denoising might be a little too high. We've generated an entirely different arm. Getting a little better. Still a little odd, but you can see we're getting closer. Do a little bit higher here, maybe 0.6. Someone said the trick is just to put it in the pocket. If you don't like your hands, just put them in your pockets. It definitely does like that. I'm also noticing like this jacket's quite odd. It's got like this like bottom part, but also a trench coat. It's like a combined piece. Let's do this again. Give us our hand. And it's all still a little bit strange. Let's, what we want to do, maybe we'll do a looser composition. And we'll regenerate that one more time. I always love hands. Hands and AI. This is the fun part. One thing that you can do, and this obviously requires a little bit of planning, but you can bring in a hand model, like a depth map. And this is actually one of the community nodes. There's a hand fixing node. It's not in the core of the application because it's a non-commercial license, but what it does is it has an AI model that's trained to create a 3D hand that is ideal in matching the position. And then it uses that as a depth control net to generate the hand. So that's like one way that it gets fixed. Someone in the community or in the chat is citing that they've been an artist and painting for 15 years and still hate hands. And AI is only 2 years old, so don't blame it. I think that's very generous and kind. We'll generate maybe one more, and then we'll just probably not focus on these hands as much. One thing that I think is probably worth calling out. Now I'm going to backtrack. We're going to keep focusing on this hand, despite my frustrations with it. If you find that a hand is slightly off, it's got 7 fingers or something like that, what I have found is that you can come in and kind of give it some guidance on what you think would make it look better, right? So we can come in and kind of like reshape the hand ourselves just a little bit. I don't think that's what we do. That still a little bit off, but it looks okay. And then we just use a denoising strength that's a little bit lower. We're asking it not to regenerate the entire hand. We're just trying to kind of like fudge the details in. It's almost like an AI blur effect, right? We're blurring those in and kind of finishing that out. So that hand looks a little better, and I think we probably would call that like improved over the original, just for the sake of giving this fella a little bit of a better face. We'll go in and do a face painting in pass. Oh yeah, there we go. It's looking a lot better. A little bit of a facelift on that guy. So we'll compare our original to the new one. Key, Alt. Got a little bit of a better face. Look at that face. Oh, so good. And then our hand has gone from that to that. So significantly improved details there. A couple of other things if I were using my eye to fix this jacket, get rid of this like weird stop or break in the fabric. It's probably the biggest standout issue with this one. Maybe the shadow over here is a little odd, but yeah. Those are the 2 pieces that I would focus on. We've got a lot of comments. There's so many comments that I catch up on. Okay. Is it possible to do complex anime perspective poses? It is possible. However, you typically need, I would say, a model that has been trained and fine-tuned a little bit better to understand what it's looking at. There are a couple of like links that people brought in. Maybe this is. Are you okay if I take the image that you uploaded and use that as a control? Would you be okay with that? I don't know what to call you other than okay, you said yup. Okay. We're going to take this sketch, and we've got a new sketch here, and we are going to use this as a control adapter, pass this in, and we are going to tune this a little bit up. We don't want as much detail. I think this got me in trouble last time, but we're going to do it anyways. Hold your nose. This is where things get a little bit dicey with my RAM, I think. Oh, it worked just fine. Okay, cool. So I did line art as the processor here, and that all works. And I didn't have any issues, so that's cool. Maybe we'll turn course on and see if that'll work a little bit better. Little bit of like the sketchiness is coming through. So as a control, this might have some weird quirks. So I'm going to turn course off and go back to this. But when you have a sketch, this is something that we talk with artists a lot about. Like when you pass in sketches and use ControlNet, we'll say this is a anime seen a dark masked warrior. That is the secondary one. A hero with armor faces a dark masked warrior, swords, digital art, blaze, brush strokes, bold ink, and watercolor. Down with the watercolor quite a bit. All right, so we're going to do this without any regional prompting. Okay, I don't anticipate this to go well for us. That's why I'm doing it. I'm expecting this to go poorly because this is one of the things. I think I may have done the wrong size though. Let's see. It's not too bad. It's not great, but it's not too bad. Make sure that we've got the right size here. Is that perfect? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So we can kind of call out where there's a little bit of issues. All the colors the same. We've lost the legs of this person, and it just doesn't look super awesome, right? It doesn't really know what it's looking at. It's kind of guessing on a lot of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to help it understand where things are. I'm going to do hands, turn off auto negative, and I'm going to use this as an anchor, okay? I'm going to come in, I'm going to tell it these are where the hands are in this composition, okay? Got hands here and hands here. We're going to do our dark masked warrior, and that maybe we are okay with being auto negative. We're going to do him over here. So that's negatively prompting dark masked warrior everywhere else. Just make sure that we get his legs in here. Boom. We're going to do a hero with armor, bright paladin, golden trim, white fabric, yada yada. So we're gonna double paint. The hands get that as well. Pulling this up, got the whole hero body here. This stuff down there. Take out the sword, and then we're gonna go with a bright glowing blue sword made of a glass crystal. I'm just kind of doing a little bit of crazy fun here. So we're going to do this kind of blade here. We're going to do those pieces, and then I'm going to do a prompt for black obsidian blade. Do this negative. This is my favorite part when I do all of this work, because then I get to generate and still see that it has problems. We get to laugh at that. So we're gonna flesh this out a little bit more, and then we'll generate this. Maybe we'll do like an abandoned throne room background setting. Okay. Here we go. In before an image of a cat and a dog fighting with balloons. That would be truly sad. Someone said, my experience is sometimes this kind of regional prompting works well. Sometimes it decides it wants to try something else. I think it depends if you use auto negative correctly. If you don't use auto negative correctly, it can kind of have some issues. But in this case, we got a decent render. We got our blade. There's certainly some problems here that we'd fiddle with. If you style with IP adapter and it's anime styled, it's definitely good. This isn't an anime model by any means. So Maybe we do anime illustration. Maybe I'll take out some of these things and we'll just try anime illustration. And yeah, somebody called this out as well. If you're a professional artist, you're not looking for this to get to the final stages perfectly. Typically what you're looking is a base image that you can work with. I was talking to an artist yesterday, and he said something to the effect, we lost our he's got like a ghost, he's a spectral guy. What he said is, you know, you want something that still has room for creative interpretation. You want to find something that's kind of, the way he described it was still in the ugly middle, so that you can apply your expression and help get it to where it can be. And that's an important piece here, and one of the, I think, underlying philosophies that we have with the Invoke suite of software is that humans are part of this process and are really needed to guide it to get to the output that we're going for. So in this case, I really like this guy, right? I really like this one. Our fella over here, he didn't get as much love and attention. So what we can do is just generate another one. And then what I would probably do if I were trying to compose this is I composite the pieces and the aspects that I like into a final output. And maybe that would be an interesting thing to do at some point, is throw this into Affinity and show you how you can kind of like bash these together, right? And create a composited image that is a little bit more ready and kind of final. I think it's probably beneficial if you're really interested in doing AI art to have access to those types of tools. It is useful and powerful to have the full suite of tools available for yourself. In this case, though, we've got a couple of good like paladins. This one's definitely the most like aligned with color. We would say a dark, I would say a masked warrior. We're gonna do make sure that he's like there. And maybe what I'll do is I'll turn down the weight a little bit and give it maybe some more freedom here. A couple questions that are coming in. Is there going to be a method for layers at some point? Yes, it's actively in progress right now. It is going to be a big change, so get prepared. They're very tricky. Someone said, complex examples like this really nail the point that AI is just a tool. Mixing this with everything else you know as an artist is how you get to what your vision is. 1000%. 1000%. Little bit of looseness on our ControlNet gave us something that's a lot more interesting, especially this paladin looks like super cool, right? Still have some like work to do on our masked warrior. But you know, it's getting closer. It's getting closer. Try like one more, and then maybe we'll take this to the old canvas, as it were. I like this one. This one's pretty cool. I'm gonna send this to unified canvas. We're gonna take this asset here, and I downloaded this, and it's like the first one in my list because this was part of the set of those new SDXL control nets that came out. I've never actually used the anime painter, but maybe this is like the time. Maybe this is the time for that. I think it might be a canny. Maybe it's line art. So when someone asked, what is that? What is it meant to do? Oh, we're gonna find out. It's I think it's an anime painting thing. I think. So maybe this will help us with our anime line art here. Now Again, this doesn't have our regional controls, which is an unfortunate element. That's something that's also actively being worked on so that you can have regional controls on the canvas with layers. Super fun times coming. And it will all be open source. So that's fun too. Okay, so we've got, this guy's kind of like shaping up a little bit. So a little bit more strength. Little bit more strength. We'll give that a little bit more strength. That's not too bad. He's got kind of like this like ghost blade. His arms are in the right pose. We're nailing it. We're nailing it. We're gonna zoom in here and see if we can get a dark masked guy here. Bring this down a little bit. And a masked warrior, raven themed, sword up in swing. Yeah, we'll give that a shot. I don't know what this control image looks like. It's a little weird. We'll take that off and try one without it. It's kind of cool, but also strange. Too high strength here without that control. Turn that down. Okay, so that's the original. That's no control. Maybe we turn the control on, decrease the strength quite a bit, and just do that early on, but turn the strength back up. We're going to try that. Oh, okay, I can see that. I can see that. We'll try that and maybe do another generation of that. Okay, we can dig it. We can dig it. He's got some glowing eyes, some interesting features there. All right, so now we've got our dark raven masked warrior featuring his black blade of shadow against our paladin with a blue blade. Super cool. Let's save this and compare this to the original. We'll do Alt here, and then we'll go to this. We've got our original. Lost a little bit of these like circly eyes bits here, but overall, I think pretty good rendering of that. So that's fun times, right? I think this is where things get interesting, because even this looks sick is a good base, right? An artist is going to want to take this, is going to want to composite, going to want to overpaint. Glimmer said, I've made choosing the cover photo of this YouTube video very easy. It is a pretty cool image. Fun. Thank you for sharing your image to the community. It's fun to work on that. Does anyone have questions on that? I know I went through that like magic process, and now we've got an image. Does everyone follow along? Okay, somebody said that was from the internet that they pulled down. Okay, so that's less fortunate, but hopefully we can cite the artist that drew that sketch. That would be nice. If you can share who sketched that, we would love to cite the work that they did. Someone asked, what is the Anime Painter ControlNet? And the Anime Painter ControlNet is, I believe, show me the full power. Show me the full power. let's compare using the same seed. Let's take, what do we want to take? What do we want to take? Let's do this. Portrait. I'm going to take off all our control layers here real quick. Portrait of a man with a hipster beard and a good vibes. No personal bias there, that's correct. All right, so we got a guy. We got this nice picture here. We're going to use our control adapter and we are going to do canny. And we're going to do an anime man with a hipster beard and good vibes. Dynamic layer. Just do that. Do an anime man with hipster beard. Let's fix the seed. We fixed the seed. Let's change that up. And we'll do this. And then we will switch to anime painter. Just do line art anime. Why not? Really didn't want to make that guy anime, did it? Even with our instructions to do so. It's a little bit illustrated, I guess. It's like a light hint of anime, a LaCroix anime, if you will. Now we've got our anime painter with line art anime, and it's the same seed. So this is purely the only thing difference here is the model. What did I say? What did I say? It's a little bit better at doing what it's supposed to be doing here. So I think the lesson here, and I talked about this early on, the domain that a ControlNet is trained on matters. So if it only has, like if a ControlNet was only trained on like photorealism, that ControlNet is going to be biasing all of your outputs towards photorealism. If it's optimized towards anime or illustration, it's going to bias towards anime or illustration to the point where you're influencing the quality of your outputs based on the nature of the ControlNet itself. It's not purely just structural information. It is sneaking in a little bit of bias when you use those based on whatever the ControlNet was trained on. And I referred to that earlier as almost like an embedding, kind of like that, right? It's still pulling this out of the model, but it is influencing it in its own way. So in this case, this is what we got from Canny. This is what we got from our anime painter. I'm not sure where we got these like lines on the forehead. It kind of looks like a cardboard cutout, but I definitely think still much more like illustrated from anime. Duh, it's probably right. So yeah, we'll call that a wrap for today. Thank you everyone for joining and attending. It was a particularly fun time to have you see all of the fun things that we can do. We'll see you at the next one. Take care, everybody.